Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's virtual panel discussion focused on rehabilitation and reentry services in our criminal justice system. This is the fifth in a series of 8 virtual panel discussions hosted by Nebraskans for Prison Reform and Stand In for Nebraska. These panels occur bi-weekly, and we will be finishing up in early November. We have 3 panels to go after tonight's discussion. We hope that you will join us for those remaining panel discussions that will be focused on issues related to parole and commutation, restorative justice, and community activism. My name is Dr. Rashani Reese, and I'm a public speaker for Ending Life Sentencing, an advocate for restorative justice practices, and I am your facilitator for this evening's discussion. A few logistics before we get started. As an attendee, your sound and your video is automatically muted, but feel free to utilize the chat window and the Q&A feature, which can be found at the bottom of your screen for any questions that you may have for our panelists. And if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please private message our Zoom host, Ashley, from Nebraskans for Prison Reform. You may have also noticed that tonight's conversation is streaming live on Facebook and is being recorded for future viewing. Without further ado, allow me to introduce our esteemed panelists. We have with us tonight Jasmine Harris, the Director of Advocacy and Policy for RISE. RISE is a nonprofit organization in Nebraska providing programming and support services for pre- and post-release individuals, including their 6-month program of character development, job readiness, and entrepreneurship. We have with us Kasey Parker, the Executive Director from the Mental Health Association of Nebraska, and also Ashley Wilkson, the HANU Home Coordinator. She is also from the Mental Health Association of Nebraska, which is a peer-operated, participant-driven organization providing a variety of programs to individuals with mental health and substance use or addiction issues. Their work is in relation to corrections and includes the Intentional Peer Support Program and community houses. A warm welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us. Each of our panelists are going to speak for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we're going to close out tonight's conversation with a Q&A session. As with our previous panel discussions, you don't have to wait till the end to drop us a question. Feel free to use the Q&A function, and our moderator, Jason Whitmer from Stand In from Nebraska, will be tracking all of your questions, and we're going to do our best to address as many of them as possible. So with that introduction, I would love to turn the mic over to our first panelist, Kasey Parker. Kasey, the floor is yours.
Well, good evening, everyone. I didn't realize that I was first in line here. So I guess I just want to start out talking about rehabilitation. I think, I think there's a myth and a lot of disbelief out there in that people can be rehabilitated, especially with some certain backgrounds or certain crimes. And I think as providers and advocates that we really need to focus on dispelling some of those and getting accurate information out there. Rehabilitation starts from the beginning. It doesn't matter how long the sentence is. It starts from the time that they enter and will continue when they leave the facility. I think the Mental Health Association's priority is making sure that not only does the culture change within the system, but also in the community again when they come back. We have a lot of programming inside. Of course, with the staffing issues that are going on, a lot of this is difficult to get the programming inside, but I think facilities, some of them work harder than others at, trying to continue to provide programming that's critical for these individuals to have, especially if it's required for them to be released on parole or supervision. I think it's really important that we look at all aspects of rehabilitation, and I think it's important, and I think the department has been looking at evidence-based practices, making sure that we're providing the best programming with the limited resources that we have. MHA provides WRAP, Wellness Recovery Action Planning. We believe fully that people need to be in control of their own lives. A lot of us grew up in systems, whether that be the criminal justice system, the behavioral health system, the public welfare system, all of them. And we have had plans, crisis plans, treatment plans, medication, all these plans for us. And I think it's important that we teach people and give them their power back and how to take charge of their own life and know what they need and be able to advocate for that. Our population of people have a hard time sometimes asking for what they need. And I really want to be able to, it's more than it. I mean, absolutely, we need housing and employment and we need these things. Of course we do. But I want people to feel confident enough about themselves to be able to ask for what they need when they need help, be able to learn new things. Even I've learned with, getting your needs met inside a prison is much different than getting your needs met on the outside. And how do we help these men and women learn how to get those needs met? And there's a whole lot to it. I think we need to come up with better, I don't know if it's curriculum, training, that helps identify these issues. Mental health is huge. If you didn't have it before you were incarcerated, you most likely have it when you're coming out. So just the mere fact of all that goes on there is, it's anxiety provoking. It's hard not to be depressed. There's a lot of things. And I think that we need to focus on making sure people have access to services upon reentry and while they are inside as well. Nebraska, we rank terribly. I won't give a number because I'll probably get it wrong, but in our behavioral health workforce, we are in a huge shortage, which is why I think we should keep promoting peer support, because we can have the peer support and be able to provide that service until people can have access to their providers, their med providers, their therapists, and all those other resources. I think the other side of rehabilitation is training staff, and by that I mean Department of Corrections staff, but also providers, community. We have to learn how to rehabilitate the way we think about rehabilitation. It even took me a while, but I fully believe that everyone, I've been fighting and advocating really hard because a lot of the states are putting criteria on the peer support certification that you can't have had a felony background, or you can't have had a relapse in the last year. Some of them are in the last 2 years. Relapse is a part of recovery and learning how to get back on the road again without spiraling, all the way down. And so I think we need to be advocates and promoting that just because one might have a relapse or screw up doesn't mean we have to take all their rights away or believe that they have to start all over again, because absolutely every single one of us struggles sometimes. And sometimes I think we expect more from the people that are currently incarcerated or just re-entering than we would anybody else. So I think stigma is big. I think we all need to keep advocating. And I think things are changing, but it's hard to turn the Titanic in a short amount of time. This system has been broken a really long time, and it's going to take all of us in partnership with the department and with other providers and with all of you, and all of us need to work together and do what's best that we can do to make sure that people are successful after incarceration. Awesome. So I could go on for a little while on a rant, but
no, I actually, so I have a couple questions for you. I just want you to clarify a couple things for the audience. Thank you so much for that introduction. I threw you in to start off with. That was me. I didn't give you a heads up. Apologies, Kasey.
No problem.
Teela, I see that you have joined us. I just want to introduce Teela Mickles really quickly, and then Kasey, I'm going to come back to you with just a couple of questions, and then we'll start to go through our other panelists. So everyone, we have with us Teela Mickles, who is the founder and the CEO of Compassion in Action Incorporated, which is a Nebraska nonprofit that focuses on reentry into the community following release from prison and preventing a cycle of crime and recidivism through education and reentry preparation programs. Teela, welcome to the panel. I'm so glad that you made it. We're starting off with Kasey, and then we're going to make our way through the panelists. And I will let you know when we're going to get to you. And each of the panelists will have a few minutes to speak about what you want to bring to the table. Then we're going to do a Q&A session at the very end. So hang out with us. So good to see you. So Kasey, thank you for the introduction. I would love if you would clarify for the audience, what is peer support and how is that different than other members on a mental health treatment team?
Well, I'm going to do the best I can to answer it, but Ashley is probably the better one to answer that question. So I might let her she is our advanced level facilitator with intentional peer support. So, but I think the thing about peer support that I love the most is that what it should be if we can, stop the world from changing it. They always want to change something good and make it something that it's not. So we're really fighting to not let that happen. But, it is just the genuine understanding that all of us can recover, and we've all been, people who have had struggles, and it could be anything. It started out where we just talked about mental health and substance use, and now it's gone to trauma and incarceration, and you name it. There's a lot of similar feelings that come along with all of those, of isolation and fear, and and we can all relate on those feelings. And nobody ever just arrives to, aha, I've now recovered. And so I think it's important that, again, relapse is part of recovery, and learning how to come back from that, and to have the support to take risks and do things that that were scary before. Sometimes work is, going to work is a risk. Being in a relationship is a risk. All these things we need to be supporting each other in, where for a long time we were just told, don't do it. I can't tell you how many people with mental health issues were told, don't work because you'll lose your benefits. Yes. Well, that's not helpful. If I were to stay home in my head all day long, that wouldn't work so well for me. So intentional peer support means a lot to me, and I know a lot of what it's not, but it's basically learning, growing, moving toward, that's the right word. We're moving towards something together, and neither one of us has more knowledge about each other's recovery than our own. So.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. And that's a perfect segue. I didn't even look, you did that for me. I didn't even have to, because Ashley, I'd love to turn the floor over to you now to tell the group about you and what it is that you do.
Thank you. Yeah, no, you did a great job. So what I get to do, besides like coordinating HANU, and kind of the ins and outs of trying to get people that want to come in transitional living, I also get to take intentional peer support, like our actual training, certification, into the facilities. And I guess they have taught me, and when I say they, I mean the individuals that are incarcerated, have taught me more about peer support than any training could. They have been doing peer support for a very long time, since the beginning. They're all each other has, to get through this really crappy experience together. And all we did was bring this curriculum in and give more of a formal way of doing it. I really appreciate this curriculum because I've gotten to do it in lots of different settings, and I don't change it depending on the audience. It doesn't matter who we are talking to, it's the same material, which I feel like that speaks to intentional peer support being useful in any capacity. And when we talk about rehabilitation, what I hear is healing. What I see and am just blown away by is the amount of really big experiences, or what some people might call traumatic experiences, that individuals have encountered, and not always having the healthiest tools and methods of dealing with these big experiences end up turning to drugs, alcohol, crime, whatever way they're shown how to deal with these life experiences. And then we punish them for the way they have learned to survive. And then not only do we punish them for how they have learned to survive, but we continue to do so without always giving those tools to figure it out, how to do it again and how to do it differently. And there is great programming. There is amazing programming with real tools, with real skills that you can learn. But I don't know, like, I know a lot of people have similar experiences as me, where I had to unlearn some of those unhealthy things first and unpack that trauma in order to learn something new, in order to be even willing to try something different. Because I was only shown the world as a certain way, or people as a certain way, and you're trying to tell me to come out here and make the right choices and surround yourself with the right people, and then it's the individual's fault when they fail or when they end up coming back. So I like the way that there hopefully is being more avenues created for people to work on some healing, but intentional peer support has really, I've watched that happen a lot, where they are able to have a genuine connection and learn how to kind of foster that in a different way than they have maybe learned before how to do relationships. And the whole idea is, like Kasey said, taking risks. If I didn't know what healthy boundaries were, if I didn't know and wasn't shown what healthy relationships look like this is an avenue for me to explore what that looks like and what it means, and then negotiate through conflict and boundaries and those things together. Whereas more traditional roles, you're not negotiating. It's a pretty clear role of the provider or the clinician, and then the client, and those are necessary tools as well. But peer support can just offer something different.
Excellent. Yes. Thank you, Ashley. And so for our audience, most of you are probably familiar with the ACEs study. So Ashley brought up big experiences, many of whom have actually been labeled as traumatic experience, though it may not be traumatic for everyone who experiences everything. But still, the ACEs study was really seminal in helping us understand in our country the results of trauma. And when we look at incarcerated people, depending on which study you look at, up to 90% of people who are incarcerated have at least one ACE, but upwards of 50 to 75% have two or more. Some of them have four or more ACEs. And considering that there's only 10 ACEs, and over the course of a lifetime, a person may only have one ACE, as a very traumatic experience. When we look at that for just what it is, then we recognize that our incarcerated people are people who have experienced trauma. So if most Americans believe in rehabilitation, which according to the latest polls, it's been consistent that most Americans believe that at least a person should be a different person when they come home from prison, that it should offer opportunities for rehabilitation. Since most Americans are on board for rehabilitation, then we need to call out that the prison system in itself is trauma, and that having an incarcerated parent is listed as an ACE, actually. And so for many individuals who experience incarceration, now we're talking family systems, we're talking repetition, this intergenerational trauma that is handed down. And Ashley, I really appreciated how you said, we expect them to do something different, but we haven't provided them with tools. So now I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to segue over to Jasmine from RISE. Jasmine, floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to see everybody and those who I can't see out in the webinar land. My name is Jasmine Harris. I am the Director of Policy and Advocacy with RISE. And as Dr. Rashani Reese mentioned earlier, we are a nonprofit that works with people who are incarcerated and re-entering into the community. And our program that we offer in 7 of the 10 facilities in Nebraska, we focus a lot on employment readiness, character development, and entrepreneurship. And one of the big pieces of our program is that connection with community. And because of COVID, we've had to shift and kind of pivot on how we do that. But that is still one of the biggest things that we really kind of hone in on. If someone doesn't have a connection to community, if community doesn't have a connection to the people who are coming home, then what are we doing? We're perpetuating those cycles of incarceration because there's no connection. No one feels like they can get their needs met. People continue to blacklist or push people off to ostracize them. And there will never be a disruption in that cycle if all we continue to do is point fingers and hold each other back and things like that. So I'm just going to do a quick presentation, if you will, just because I hate being a talking head. So I'll give you pictures to look at. 1 second. So breaking the cycles of incarceration. And for me, when I look at these pictures, these are pictures of individuals who have gone through our program. We call our program participant builders because they are building their lives. They are rebuilding the connections with their families. They're rebuilding connections with the communities they plan to go home to. They're building their next step for their careers, all of that. And what we have seen time and time again is that individuals who have taken our program, they have children who are currently incarcerated in the same facilities as they are. We have grandbabies that we want to not see come into the system because we know that upwards of 70% of young ones who have a parent who is incarcerated will become incarcerated. And so that for me is what breaking the cycles of incarceration is all about, so that future generations do not have to continue down that avenue or pathway of trauma, as we just talked about, what they talked about as one of the ACEs of a parent being incarcerated. We want to see the families back together. We want to see the children smiling and happy. As I got into this work, one of the things that I come from is a prevention background. My background is in public health, community education, and substance use prevention. And what I started seeing was a lot of people leaving the criminal justice side. They worked in the courts or they worked on the back end and they started coming to prevention. And so what happens when everybody leaves that back end to help people as they're coming home to come to the prevention side? And this quote always stuck out to me. It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. But if we don't help broken men and women repair themselves, then we do a disservice to the children who we are trying to help. One of the things I always said, when we in the prevention role, when we're working with kids, when we're in the elementary schools and middle schools working with kids and we're pouring into them, but if they go home and their cups are continuously punched with holes, everything that we poured into them continues to pour out. So we have to break the cycles on the beginning and on the back end. And you look at the criminal justice system. Where is the back end? Where is the front end? This picture kind of has it in a linear fashion, but it's not, it's cyclic. And what I always look at is at the bottom right corner, and it talks about community. Community is going to be your prevention and your reentry, and how we have to try and break these cycles. Of course, you need to dismantle and disrupt in the facilities, in the pretrial. when you come into contact with law enforcement. But the community piece is so important, because the community piece is what can build up an individual and it can tear an individual down. The community piece is what can disrupt these systems by coming together. It impacts the policies that we put in place. So it's really important that we look at it from not only the individual side, but also from the community side, and what we can do when we talk about rehabilitation and reentry. For me, rehabilitation, the definition, I guess, if you want to look at it from that, is to restore to a point of origin, right? But a lot of times people aren't rehabilitated because they were never at that point of considered normality or this origin that society has put on people. So we have to start looking at it as it is just educating people on how to become better selves. We don't have to say it's rehabilitation. We can say how we say character development. With our program, everybody, I'm not going to say everybody, but majority of people, when they hear about it, they want that entrepreneur piece. They want to start a business. They want that information. But what they come out on the other end of is knowing that they'd rather have that character development piece more than the entrepreneurship piece, because you can't build that business. You can't reconnect with your family unless you work on yourself. And I tell individuals, you have to work on the inside of your cup, because if it's dirty and you go over here to try to do something else, the inside of that cup is still going to be dirty. So it's all about working on self. So looking at this from micro, meso, and macro level, don't worry about those words. Micro level, individuals, families, relationships. You have to work on individuals. They have to work on themselves. When we have programs that are really doing that work, like MHA said, it's all about giving people the tools to be able to navigate situations in life. When you look at the meso level, that's when you have to take it up a notch, because that's when you're looking at community. If we give an individual all the tools in the world, if the community, if the neighborhoods, if the people out there continue to put up those barriers, no matter how many tools we give individuals, they still come up against those barriers. And if they get discouraged, and many do, we go back to that cycle of incarceration. And then you got the macro level, which we're talking about systems, and we all know how the systems are. I think Kasey said the system has been broken for a long time. I always say the system has been set up to work the way it is, which is a bad system. And we need to figure out how we do a better system. I know you're going to talk about restorative justice on another session. I think that's the way to go. We have to begin looking at how do we, as a community, and people who have been victims of crime and people who have done the crime can still come back to the same community and live, because 90% of people who are incarcerated will come home to a community. They will return, whether it's to the place that they committed the crime or another community. But we all have to ensure that we're safe. And the only way that we're going to be safe is to ensure that people feel like they belong and are welcome. Otherwise, you continue to ostracize them and they go back into that cycle of what put them in incarceration, whether that's mental health, substance use. Again, how do I cope with everything that I've been going through and what I've been, my coping skills that I've been taught. So when we're looking at reentry, there is an individual, Dr. Carrie Pettis Davis, out of Florida State University, who came up with this 5-key model for reentry. And this is a lot of the work that we do and focus on. And no matter where you start at, it's all about the inner person and that character development piece and how am I going to move? So healthy thinking patterns. If someone doesn't have the healthy thinking patterns that they need, they're going to continue to make those bad decisions and choices. So we have to start building programming around what's going to help uplift that positive, healthy thinking, effective coping strategies. We put meaningful work trajectories on here because what we notice with reentry services is, yes, we want people to have employment, but if they get stuck in a job that is menial, that they don't find, pleasing, it doesn't, like, what am I doing this for? And sometimes it's a lot of what we call survival jobs, barely making minimum wage to make ends meet. So we need to have something where people feel like they can work towards, where it's positive, where they're affirmed. Positive systems and positive social engagement, which is what are those positive activities that I'm a part of. One of the things that RISE does, we have what we call our RISE Alumni Association. So as people are coming home from the community, we're building an intentional space for individuals who have taken the program, where they can learn from each other. They can, get that positive support from each other, that affirmation. Help me in this kind of aspect because I've been through this. So kind of like the peer support, except without the certification, although some people might be getting certified. It's really building that community of individuals who are going to push me to do better and be better. And that feeds into the positive relationships. So that's how you begin to look at breaking that cycle within self. But then you also look at it, how do I disrupt and dismantle from the aspect of being an individual who is working on myself, but I'm still stuck in this cycle of incarceration. And we have to disrupt and dismantle from all of these aspects that we see in the community. So again, my background is in public health, and this is kind of like a public health model, how we look at the social, economic, and environmental determinants of health. I call them determinants of life, and how that impacts how the cycles of incarceration are repetitive. How do we dismantle people coming out of poverty? We have to look at the economic stability. We have to look at the housing. We have to, because we cannot program our way out of the incarceration status that we're in. We have to begin looking at the systems. We have to begin looking at those foundations of things in order to ensure that people have an actual pathway out of that. And this is just another way of looking at that other cycle. What access and quality of my education plays into that cycle of incarceration. The economic stability is going to play into that cycle of incarceration. The neighborhood and built environment. We know that law enforcement is going to monitor places that have been run down, that have broken windows, what we call the broken windows. They're going to look more at those poverty-stricken areas, which is going to drive up how many people are incarcerated out of those areas. So we have to begin looking at it from that standpoint too. So that's just an overview, because like Kasey, I can talk forever about it. We have to ensure that we are building up the community piece, because again, it's on the front end and the back end that is going to help us break those cycles of incarceration.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. A couple of thoughts that I had. So I'm really glad that you brought up the question of prevention and this idea of front end and back end, because in many spaces in criminal justice reform world, I see a lot of people will sort of like deflect the questions to be like, well, yeah, but how do we stop kids from going into the system? And rather than talking about the individual that we have, the system that we have in front of us with our 2.5 million people who are incarcerated, there is this sense or this attitude of like, well, they made their choices. We don't really believe in rehabilitating them because that's hard or whatever, but let's just like focus on like prevention, not understanding that these 2.5 million people are our brothers, sisters, husbands, fathers, wives, all of the relationships, right? Like, and those individuals play a role in the family system. We have disrupted the family system through mass incarceration. We cannot arrest our way out, parole our way out. I really appreciated how you talked about that, Jasmine. And something in your presentation that really rings a bell for me is that when you talked about the 5 reentry pieces, all 5 of them are connected to well-established resilience factors. 40 years of research done, internationally around what makes a person resilient, what makes a person survive some of the worst horrors that human beings have ever endured on this planet. And we know that having meaning in life, having a purpose in life is core. We know that being able to build positive relationships with anybody, it doesn't have to be with a million people. It can just be with a significant other, with a child, with a parent. Having community and social engagement, emotional regulation, as you talked about with your coping strategies, right? And your ability to problem solve, which many people think somehow is IQ, but no, it's more about healthy thinking. Like you said, can I solve my way out of this problem? Which is something that Ashley had brought up about if we give people the tools. Okay, so soapbox number 2, I will turn the mic over to Teela. Teela Mickles, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for running me down. This is my favorite thing to do. I'm the founder and CEO for Compassion in Action. I actually started working with women confined in prison in 1984. I started Compassion in Action in 1994. And I just did it because I had a spiritual encounter that let me know, because I came out of a very bad marriage and I had 5 children. And when I had a spiritual encounter, understanding God's love for me and also his ability to heal, I took my very talented children inside the women's prison, and we facilitated chapel services at the women's prison in York for like 10 years before I started Compassion in Action. And the ladies start sending me letters, and every single letter was similar in the fact that they said, I never talked about this until you came. I never shared this with anyone until you came. And they would write what it was that they didn't talk about and they didn't share. Well, I have no experience in, incarceration. My marriage was a prison, but I have no experience in incarceration or drug abuse or any of that. But I thought it was very interesting that each woman mentioned a childhood trauma, abuse, violation that they never talked about. And they never saw the connection that this is why the drug situation happened, which probably resulted in the crime. So they were focused on the fact that they were a bad person using drugs and now they got a crime, but they didn't connect. And so, this is a core issue. This is where this started. This is where my life turned left instead of right. And this is when these things that I don't like about my life became an option. And so this was just feeding me and letting me understand there's core issues. And I like the word that was in the beginning about healing. That's exactly what the curriculum is that we have developed based on the people that I serve. Because I went in there knowing nothing, I had to listen and I had to learn. And I did listen and I learned a lot. We're going on 35 years now. And so what we listened and learned is that, number one, validation, personal validation. When a person is validated, then that person is genuinely motivated to be educated. And everybody has value. But if there's one thing they're not receiving or understanding, not even in prison, before they ever got there, it was a sense of personal worth and personal value all by myself, because I'm a human being and I'm breathing, inhale, exhale. So I count. And so the curriculum actually helps them go to that core person, that little girl inside, that little boy inside. I ran a transitional home for women from 2000 to 2010. I was a part of the Department of Corrections Serious and Violent Offender Reentry Initiative that failed miserably because the federal government was trying to run it. They didn't know squat jack what they were doing. And so, one of the things that was positive that came out of that was shared data. The different systems begin to share data, recognizing they were serving similar populations. And so different people knew what was going on, because we work with Director Frakes, we work with the parole and probation, we work with RISE, we work with all the individuals who are doing this, because our focus is that person. And that's a very difficult journey for that individual to take. And it's an 8-week course, and we have 2 different phases. And because of COVID, we probably have tripled to, I don't know, we're serving maybe 200 people now, because we do correspondence courses and we're covering all the facilities, all the state facilities. We don't do jail, but we do all the different prisons. And it's helping them to see, where did it start? It's helping them wanting to experience personal worth and value. And then they're the ones that come up with the idea that they're broken, that there's unresolved issues, that there's something that was hurting, that they never wanted to dig it up and go there, but realizing that's the one thing that can trigger something negative if they don't go there and look at it. So we provide this journey for them to take, and it's difficult. I've learned from so many individuals that we serve that it's a difficult thing, because the truth really does hurt. And so once they get that sense of value, that sense of worth, then they're able to apply themselves to the other entities, the different programs and the different things that are available to them on a genuine, I am worth it mentality. I am worth it. I can do this because I am somebody. So when they go and join the different ones, whether it's Reconnect, whether it's RISE, whether it's Metropolitan, they're going there with a understanding of that you know, I can do this because I'm worth it. We empower them from their perspective because, in my opinion, since I've been going in and out of prison all these years, the key is that I go in and out. I've never laid my head one time and spent one night there. So for an individual who is in an environment that this community knows absolutely nothing about, to maintain any type of attitude of hope or dream under circumstances we know nothing about, to me, that person's already a hero. And we let them know that you're probably going to come out here and try to impress somebody that couldn't even do what you just accomplished, because you're still dreaming, you're still thinking, and you're still trying. And we don't even know what you went through. I love how Jasmine kept bringing up community, because that's exactly where we have gone full circle back to community. Because in the beginning, we worked with the mother, we worked with her children, but we worked with the children in the community. We had, a lot of people weren't trying to connect with the woman or the man. We work with more men now these days, but no one was trying to, we work with all of them. There's just more men confined, but they would connect with the children. So we would have volunteer families that worked with our children with the permission of mom, who was confined. And so the children knew that they were having these special events and this exciting stuff happening because mother gave us permission. So we were rebuilding those bridges. We called our slogan was embracing the person inside prison, rebuilding the family, and breaking the cycle. And so individuals, volunteers would be more willing to connect with the children than to have that direct connection with the person confined. Since I've been at it for so long, I have 3 generations now that I actually observed. And that community thing is huge. I have 5 women, and they're all out and doing well. No, I take that back. One just went back. It's just really difficult. She has mental health issues that she picked up since she was in the military. But what I noticed is that the one family had a volunteer family from the community. This community family connected her story with their community, which was totally different from her community. We're talking, the family was Caucasian persuasion. My lady is African American, and she has 3 young Black boys. And so her family would take these 3 boys and help them with their homework, have them do things in their home. They took them to visit their mother on Mother's Day and on holidays, when a family member would not even touch that. But this volunteer family supported this woman and her 3 African-American boys for 8 years. So today, one of those boys has been into the military successfully once or twice. The other 2 are raising children, but those boys never went into the system. However, my other families who did not have that community support, they were depending upon the family to embrace them, the family to quit looking at them and saying, you're different from us, there's something wrong with you, there's nothing wrong with us. Those that trusted that family piece, their children are confined. Little boys that I picked up when they were 10 years old to take them to free swimming lessons at the Omaha Home for Boys. I see his face on 6 o'clock news going to NSP for murder. I remember that little boy when he was 10. And I believe the community failed him. Mom did her best, but the community failed him. Speaking with parole and probation, I understood that 40% of individuals who are on parole and probation reoffend or violate their parole 3 years after freedom. So just like Jasmine said, the prevention piece is in the community, keep them from going. The intervention piece is in the community, because we have to go inside and see how we can hook up with the RISE, hook up with whatever is on the inside, so that we have that walk from the inside to the outside. And then there's that receiving our people. Why do they come out and have to go back? The community needs to be more responsible for taking care of our own. Because if they're feeling more success and more accomplishments while confined than they do when they come out, then we, the community, are failing. And that's exactly what we're working on right now, to do even more community involvement. And so our focus is pre-release. It's pre-release education, reentry preparation. Because first it's pre-release, getting that person to understand their value, getting that young man, the adult man, to connect with the little boy inside that's still wounded, hurt, and angry, getting that woman to connect with the little girl inside who was probably raped and beaten. When they connect.
Teela, I'm so sorry to interject. Your mic just suddenly did something very weird and we can't really hear you.
Oh, I didn't touch it. Can you hear me now?
It's try muting and unmuting again. I apologize, but you sound like a bug.
I sound like a bug. Do I still sound like a bug?
You do. I'm not sure what happened, Teela. Everything was great. And then as you were talking, suddenly you went into bug mode.
Well, I'm sorry. I can't do anything about it because I just have you on my phone. Maybe it's too much action.
Is the mic on the bottom of your phone? Did you move your phone? Sometimes if it covers the mic.
I didn't touch my phone. It's sitting in a thing on my table, so I don't touch it.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Why don't you try to finish what you were saying? I'm so sorry. I wasn't trying to interrupt you. We just suddenly couldn't hear you. Let's see if we can hear you now. If you want to finish what you were saying, I apologize.
Oh, it's not your fault. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you okay. Well, let's roll with that.
Okay. Pre-release education, reentry preparation assist our individuals in preparing their own personal plan of reentry. And because it's so debilitating as far as bringing people back to a sense of worth and a sense of value, we have many, many life sentence servers who are now taking our course. A gentleman who's a veteran said if he'd taken my course earlier, he would have served them 27 years in a lot better way than he has to continue. So we know that personal validation is extremely important for genuine motivation, and then that person goes to education and then vocation based on their own personal worth. So that's what Compassion in Action does. We try to prepare everyone to be connected in a better way with the different services that we have. I'm with Mission Church, and the pastor that started Mission Church, Myron Pierce, was on parole 4 years ago when he started it. We just celebrated a 4-year anniversary yesterday, and we opened a Mission Hope House. The Mission Hope House will provide transitional living for 7 men. Jasmine, get that down on your little tab because we're open now, okay? And only have like 3 people lined up, and we will provide the support. We will provide the peer support. I teach coaching, and one of our latest member that I officiated his wedding just last month, he did graduate from RISE. So we do work, very closely with the other entities. We just make sure that our people understand their own personal worth and value so they can jump in and really work with it. The latest thing, and then I'll wrap it up, is that one of the ladies, there's a lady that worked for another organization. She was in my office and she was telling me about her son who's confined. And I could tell by the way she was talking that she didn't have a clue how to communicate with him. So she gave me his name when she goes, I looked him up. This gentleman serving life to life, which means he's not coming out. As a 12-year-old daughter, he's not coming out. Mama doesn't know how to communicate with him. Therefore, he does not benefit, I don't think, from, who does? Who would? So I'm trying to get a survey approved. I just wanted a survey, but Director Franks looks at it as research to find out from the confined residents. That's what I call them. I don't use the inmate word and none of that other stuff. RISE has their different words, and I have one too. Confined residents, to find out from them, what does a beneficial visit or phone call really look like? What are the things you want to talk about? What are the things you want to feel? What are the things you expect from your family? What does your family expect from you? I want to hear that from the people who are confined so I can assist the families and friends out here in having more productive and beneficial visits, because those visits mean everything to our participants. And if you're just faking it or just pretending or have unrealistic expectations from a visit or a phone call, then the family eventually drifts apart. But if we can qualitatively put that together so that the people outside understand from the confined individual what's really going to work, and the people on the inside understand how can they best communicate with their family and what are their expectations from their family, perhaps we can keep those bridges a little bit more connected, even especially for those who are going to be serving long-term life sentences. I think that's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Teela. So much of what you said just really resonated. There's people dropping stuff in the chat about community. Everybody's really resonating with this idea, you know, and hope. What is the loss of hope? And that is essentially, I actually have to agree with Jasmine on this, that the system is built and designed, it knows exactly what it's doing. So when people say like, well, what does rehabilitation look like for somebody who has committed violence? Well, actually, I think everybody in this room knows what rehabilitation looks like for someone who has committed violence. But our society has put a lot of emphasis on individual factors and a judgment of the individual person and less on the context. And everybody in this room is really good at holding the context and talking about how if we change the context and we come back to validating the individual's experience, then we're talking about rehabilitation. Then we're talking about empowering people to change and empowering people to have their own destiny. Everybody in this room, you've done amazing work. I would love to jump into our Q&A session if our panelists are ready. We had a question from Linda right at the top that said, if somebody is already out but did not take advantage of programs and now they need support, where can they go? And that's an open question for any of our panelists. If you want to come off mute and answer, feel free. Teela, yes, it's you.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
We have those individuals contact us, and what we will do is first we just have to hear what it is that they're needing, and then we normally connect them to Reconnect, or if it's a job situation, we know Metropolitan Community College has a reentry program, but we ourselves provide life skills, and the church provides that peer support. Since the pastor was on parole when he started the church, he understands that transitional journey, and he also has a shift program where he's teaching individuals how to start their own business. And we've got several graduates, and they're doing their business now, and they're doing it well, and they're positioned to where they're hiring individuals who are coming out. So we can assist that person.
Great, thanks. Teela, anyone else have suggestions?
Yes, I was just gonna piggyback on Teela, what she said. A lot of organizations, if you reach out, we can connect you to the right organization that's doing the work, because we can't work in silos when it comes to assisting people when they're coming home from incarceration or struggling. And we have to ensure that we are getting these other service organizations on board too. So that's a big piece of what we do. We're doing a lot of collaboration and outreach, so that, say for instance, workforce programs know, you're going to have struggles with people with criminal histories who've been impacted by the system. So these are the things that you can do. These are the organizations that do it. So reaching out to us, we can connect and make sure that individuals are getting to the right places.
Thank you, Jasmine. I saw Kasey, you came off mute.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that well, we have what we call a warm line, not a crisis line, because we want individuals to call before it becomes a crisis. So if you're struggling or you're starting to realize that things are happening, again, the idea is to prevent it. So that number is answered by a peer specialist 24/7, and it's 261-5959. So and then we will also try and assist with getting people connected to, the other services, RISE, trade, wherever we can, whatever it is that they're needing. MCC has a lot of resources that people don't know about, I think. So hopefully we can get these numbers out there. Like Jasmine said, we all need to work together. There's the need is way greater than all of us. And so coordinating and trying to work together is necessary.
Absolutely. And if I could just get somebody to drop that number in the chat for our participants, that would be great. And then Ashley, I saw that you did come off mute.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add to that. We have we've got the peer support, we've got, the connections with the pieces in the community, and whatever individuals are needing, we'll do our best to connect them to those resources. But we also, we have, we've got employment specialists, we've got outreach workers and especially when it's basic needs type stuff, if people are struggling with that kind of stuff, we can always hook people up with stuff immediately, typically, depending on whatever they're needing. But if it's just a matter of getting connected to resources and support, I think any one of us would gladly assist.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So Sean on Facebook has said that he feels getting skills outside the typical trades would help men and women prior to and getting out, for example, like nursing or power and production, factory work. What is being done to help with any of that, if anything at all, in those like occupational arenas?
I think right now, organizations are doing as best they can, working within the system that they have to work in. You're not going to be able to get a lot of programming in right now because we are in a staffing crisis as well as an overcrowding crisis when it comes to our state facilities. A lot of the programs that we talk about are offering what we consider soft skills, because we can give people those trade skills. They can learn how to weld. They can learn how to, master whatever the trade skill is. But what we hear from the employers a lot is these individuals aren't showing up on time. Just those things that really need to be ingrained. So that's what a lot of people are doing. And like I say, you can go get a skill and learn how to do that job, but if you don't work on yourself, that job it's not going to matter because you're not going to keep it. So it's really those soft skills that a lot of our programs are focusing on. And I will say, also, you have to look at what kind of occupation is out there. Policy will drive a lot of what can happen. There are certifications and licensures that have prevented people who have been system impacted, who have felony convictions, from being able to even get that job. So right now there will be, like in the interim legislative session going on, there's going to be a hearing on how do we work and get those individual boards, those kind of industries on to the same page of we need to loosen up these requirements that you have, or these prohibitions that you have against people who have these kind of convictions, and how do we ensure they have a clear pathway into getting some of that meaningful work.
And what Jasmine is saying is extremely important when we're talking about job retention, because once that door opens up and the people are able to go, an employer is opening the doors for employees that he's taking a risk. If that employee does well, then that door stays open. If that employee does not do well, that door shuts for all of us. And so it's important for that individual to go through the necessary preparation. And then also, when you have that preparation and you have community support, your employer is impressed by your ability to connect and to do your business, showing that you appreciate the support, you appreciate the help. And sometimes you can get that position just because you have the community support behind you.
Absolutely. And a really good way for us to see how the community plays a role is when laws and legislation come up for people who have CORIs, who have certain offenses that will show up in their background checks. All of us in the outside community, we can support these individuals by pushing our legislators to overturn such things, to make background checks not a life sentence. Because in many states right now, if you've committed an act of violence, that is a life sentence. So you come home and then to what? Talk about lack of hope. lack of like being able to build up anything for yourself in the community or whatnot. So we had another question from the audience. People want to know how to get involved. So how do people get involved in what it is that you do?
I have a website, and it's www.compassionandactioninc.com. And all my information, contact information is there. I would love to hear from anyone who would like to connect. And we're always open to bring that part.
Great. I'm going to drop that website in the chat right now. Thank you, Teela. Anyone else?
I think I can just, say that we are always needing volunteers. We have 2 transitional living homes, while one's a respite, 5-day respite, one's a longer stay for people reentering, and we can always use the extra help and the extra support in supporting the individuals. And again, you can call that same number that Jason put in and it's also on our website too, if you want to volunteer.
Thank you so much. Oh, great. Somebody beat me to dropping it in the chat. Beautiful. And Jasmine, what you got?
Yes, most definitely. I'm going to put that there right now. We have many volunteer opportunities. Again, community is one of the biggest things that we focus on. Because we did have to pivot a lot with our volunteer opportunities during COVID. We do have digital volunteer opportunities where we are reviewing resumes, where we're giving feedback on that. Like tonight, because I'm on the panel, I couldn't even make it. We have an actual graduation for our individuals who have moved over to the community corrections here in Omaha, and they're pitching their business ideas and enjoying a meal with the church that provided the meal for the evening. And there's just so many ways. Policy and advocacy is another way, as we have the interim session coming around and the regular session coming up. If you want to know how to advocate on behalf of, we do a lot of that outreach work and a lot of training around that as well. And we also, if you don't know what your actual volunteer mode might be, we have a Rise Reads where you can join in and join a book club and start reading some of the things that talk about the impact of the incarceral state on individuals and get involved as a step that way. We also have what we call Rise and Shine, where we are in Omaha and Lincoln and online 1 day a week, each week, where you can drop in and meet with some of our individuals to learn more about what we do and how to get even more involved. So csrise.org, all those opportunities on the Get Involved tab.
Love it. Great. Well, I would love to get some closing thoughts from each of our panelists. Tonight has been a fabulous discussion and a reminder to all of us. It comes back to community. It comes back to the people who love and support us and help us through everything from recovery to incarceration experiences to healing from trauma or just healing from anything. I don't know about you all, but I'm on a healing journey from, this human experience. So, Ashley, why don't we start with you with some closing thoughts?
I just really appreciate the invitation to this. I knew that it was around and I had heard about it, but I'm so glad to actually be here and involved and hear other people. Just the passion that is here in this room together. I'm just humbled to be in sharing this space with you guys. It gets so hard sometimes when we watch systems fail people over and over, and like Teela said, generations after generations. And I think it's things like this that help fill our buckets to keep going and doing what we're doing. And systems can change, and they will change if we can continue doing what we're doing and have the power to just keep going. Is my thing, is just keep going, and people are worth it.
Oh yeah.
Amen to that. Teela, some closing thoughts from you, madam?
I too want to resonate that appreciation. Having seen things change over, 3 decades, I'm very hopeful. I saw when things were a lot more difficult, and we open our doors to more and more challenges. And our latest challenge is the forgotten, and that is that individual who has to register their life. And that's such a heartbreaking thing, because most of these individuals were victims, and then they grew into an adult that are victimized, and they never catch a break, and they all have a life sentence. And so we're hopeful that these individuals, can also have some legislation that will help them have a life and breathe, not be the walking dead because they have to register about everything. And I get all these other sides of the story. So when you get, no line is so fine it doesn't have two sides. So when you hear this person's other side, you're wondering, how are they still breathing? And then for them to be released but still be in prison, you know what I mean? I think that's something that we want to just also keep in mind. And I am focusing on some of those right now intentionally. And so I think, she said, just keep going, never give up. I tell the people that we serve in all the facilities, if you're not dead, God's not done. And so we just keep hoping, and we just keep pressing in.
Thank you, Teela. I think we all know that breathing is not just the definition of being alive. And there is a movement to end life without parole. For anyone who missed our previous sentencing reform panel, go back and check out the recording. But that is a passion of Ashley and I, is actually sentencing reform. So closing thoughts, Jasmine, and then we'll get to Kasey.
My closing thoughts are always just get involved where you can. It doesn't have to be in a big way. It doesn't have to be earth shaking. If your getting involvement is to join somebody's pen pal program, if your getting involvement is to donate your $5 to an organization, it's all going to make an impact. I think Ashley was talking about how it gets so disheartening, because there are points in time when it's like, what are we doing this for? It seems like nothing is changing. But to hear Teela say, over the 3 decades, things have changed. I see people and hear people now who tell me, I don't know how you do that policy stuff. It's like, yeah, we're still pushing the rock up the hill that they started over 10, 15, 20 years ago. But it's going to impact somebody, and it's going to eventually get to a point where it's going to get to the top and roll downhill, and it's all going to change eventually. But it's never going to change until people get involved, until we each one teach one, everybody reach out and educate somebody on it, bring somebody else along with you. And that's basically how we get this, because if the willpower of the people isn't there, then we're not going to be able to push the political will, and the political will has to bend to the power of the people. So
Right.
that is mine. Get involved.
Thank you, Jasmine. And somebody did ask, before we get to Kasey, somebody did ask about, how do we support each other in the policy stuff for those of us who are new to it? We've all been new to it. Oh my gosh, we've all been new to it, right? It can be really overwhelming. So everyone who attended, by signing up and registering for this webinar, you're actually going to be added to the mailing list. And I know that Nebraska's for Prison Reform are going to be starting strategy sessions. And so you're going to start to receive notifications for those things, so you can attend again and just get involved. Kasey, closing thoughts from you?
Pressure being last. I really appreciate the opportunity. I love the conversation tonight. I had talked earlier about not being able to stay on for the whole thing, and I couldn't leave because I wanted to hear it. So I think the thing is that we all have a similar message, and we've been working in it long enough to see what the possibilities are, but we need to address the trauma. People think it's cheesy, but we do have to hold hope for people. We just have to. And I love Teela's message of finding purpose. I strongly believe that we all have a purpose, and we all need to find what that is. And I'll end by saying what we say often at MHA is you are not defined by the worst thing you've done, and you are not defined by the worst thing that's ever happened to you. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kasey, Jasmine, Ashley, Teela. It was such a pleasure to have you. See accolades for you all in the chat. A lot of people were resonating with what you were saying tonight. And we will get this done. We will end mass incarceration. We will find healing. We're on this journey with you. Thank you for being with us tonight. So with that, I do believe we have brought the evening to a close. So thank you everyone for attending, and we will be in community with you all soon.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.